Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Well, I've got some great news, Dr. Shealy. Jason has been our engineer for quite some time here at GCN. And he's decided that we needed another option for president of the United States. Of course, there's Donald Trump on the Republican team, and then there's Joe Biden on the Democrat team, and then there is Jason Stanek for president. So our engineer right here at GCN, who you don't get a chance to hear from very often, class, is running for president. I'm not kidding. And if you would like to learn more about him, you may. And you can go to his website. It's JasonStanek2020.com. Jason, JASON, STANEK 2020.com. JasonStanek2020.com. He's running for president. And Jason, welcome to the broadcast. And please tell us about your candidacy and why you are running for president against two of the most well-known people on the planet.
Well, this is going to be a write-in campaign, and some states don't even allow write-ins, but if you go to the website, you can see which states you can actually write me in. But idea here is right now, I don't think this country is as divided as, mainstream media and the political elite want to make you think it is. Everybody wants freedom, justice, and prosperity for all Americans. So that's why I'm running, just so you don't have to say, oh, it's my team versus your team. We're all on the same team here. So just giving everybody some option here.
Jason, don't you have to be a certain age to run for president? Are you old enough?
I'm exactly 35 years old. So.
Okay. I thought you were about 20.
He sounds 20, doesn't he? He sounds like he's a very healthy young man. So, Jason, you've decided to do this. What do your associates at Genesis Communications think about one of their peers running for president of the United States? Have any of them commented?
Yeah, they think it's fine. It's kind of, I don't know. I've been saying this for a couple of years already. So, Brad over here, he thinks it's just a bit. But no, it's, I'm registered with the FEC, got the website there, got some more paperwork to do. In certain states, even to be a write-in, you have to tell them you're going to be a write-in. In some cases, you even have to have electors signed on, ready to go. But, I'm getting some of that through. I missed a few because I didn't realize there were all these rules for write-ins. I thought it was simple enough to just say, oh, that's the person I want to vote for. But if it isn't, if stuff isn't, you don't have the documents and things, it doesn't count. So don't vote for me if you're not in a state that will actually accept it. But that's on the website. You can see which states count. So.
And Jason, I understand from your website you're doing something that we at USA Prepares do. And that is in the upper right-hand corner of your website, there's a donate. There's a red box that says donate, but right in front of it, it says don't donate. So you're not allowing any donations, which I think is really wonderful. So here is as a statement that you're making. And you're not trying to capitalize on it and take advantage of people. You're just saying, here's an alternative. Is that right?
Yeah, that's basically it. I think there's a there's a problem too about how much we want to, people running for office need to spend money. I get why you would if you were, if you had advisors and all these things and you wanted to get ad space on TV, but I figure internet's there. I can just spread it out on there, get people to check that out, and I don't see the need to be focusing so much on how much a campaign is spending. That's the kind of thing that's so interesting to me when you looked at primary debates and you had to hit a certain threshold to actually get on debate stages, and it's like that seems silly to me that it's all designed around pumping money into this machine. But point is that I don't want any money. I'm going to try to run this with as bare bones as possible. As right now, it's a one-man show. I did the whole website. I'm going to make some YouTube videos here shortly. And again, it is. I want to make a point about not spending any money on this.
Okay, so Jason, I understand that if someone wanted to, and the number might not be exactly right, but it's probably pretty close, that a person could build a blog and have a hosted blog for maybe $5 a month. Is that right?
That sounds probably about right.
Okay, so are you saying that for $5 a month you're running for president, or am I extrapolating too much on this?
Well, I did have to buy the domain and built the website on Wix, and altogether so far I've spent about $45.
Okay, so of all the campaigns that are for all the offices in the United States, bar none, I would have to guess, an educated guess, that you have spent less than everybody else. So you are number one in spending the least money running for any office, including dog catcher.
I would bet, yeah.
There you go. Well, Jason, I wanted to ask you, is this the opening statement from your candidacy? Are we the outlet, the media outlet, other than the internet, for making this known that you're running for president, Jason Stanek?
Yeah, besides the website, this would be it.
Okay. Now, you engineer for other broadcasts right here at Genesis Communications Network. Now, I'm in Missouri, Dr. Shealy's in Missouri, and you are in Minnesota at the headquarters of Genesis Communications Network. Are the other broadcasts for whom you engineer, are they going to put you on and let you communicate your candidacy for president as well?
Maybe a couple. I could see a couple of them I'll talk to, but...
Would you care to share with our broadcast classroom what other broadcasts at Genesis you engineer for? Just so they know a little bit more about your candidacy, because, you may not be be able to be in the Oval Office as much as, people might want. You might be saying, look, I'd like to be there, but 9 to 11 on Monday through Friday, I got to be with Vinny and his, the faculty, Dr. Shealy and Rick Miller and Rich Sheben and Gwyneth Isaacs and, and so forth. You might have to carve out a couple hours every morning to be with us. So, what other broadcast do you broadcast for, if you don't mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, that's after this. Some days I do Dr. Dahlia. Some days I do, it's Lifestyles Unlimited. That's real estate investing, and Del Walmsley with that. And I run Sons of Liberty, but I don't expect I'd be talking on their show. And then there's Lock and Load with Bill Frady. That's basically the ones I normally handle, so.
Okay, so there are roughly 5 broadcasts that you engineer for. And, I think it'd be great if they gave you the opportunity to explain your candidacy the way you're doing here. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about your candidacy? Like how you picked your cabinet.
Yeah, I just kind of picked people that I've been paying attention to for a bit, things I've noticed, specific to, certain issues that, I would see this is the thing that they talk about the most, or they have a, main point about this issue or that issue, and so put them in what I would think to be the most appropriate cabinet position, most appropriate department that would handle those kinds of things. So.
And I see that you have Secretary of Labor Bernie Sanders. Why is he your Secretary of Labor?
Well, he's a guy who and I'll tell you, I'm not a leftist like Bernie is or anything like that myself, but he believes in workers' rights. So to me that seemed the most appropriate, and I'm not a socialist or anything like that, but I think it's fine if he's there. Although I did put a little note there that I might, for Deputy Secretary of Labor, I might need to put a libertarian in there just to balance him out. But just the idea that he is, strong on workers' rights, so it makes sense to me.
Okay, and for Health and Human Services.
Ooh, I put Dr. Drew in there, didn't I? I wasn't sure about that one because I didn't necessarily want to go with, celebrities or anything. But I know enough people who, trust him already, having listened to him for decades on radio and TV. So, I thought it made sense just so you had somebody people trusted, knew. Again, I didn't necessarily want to put a celebrity in there, but, I think he makes sense.
Okay, and for commerce?
What do I have there? I haven't looked in a minute. Is that
Andrew Yang.
It's Andrew Yang. Okay.
Yeah.
He's interesting because, he started out as a business guy, he started a nonprofit that was about, building, or providing, support for entrepreneurs in certain locations to try to help spur more economic growth in those areas. He's kind of turned away from that a bit. I mean, that nonprofit still exists, but, what is that called? Foundation for America or something? Now I'm not even remembering what it was, but, he's interesting. He has an interesting way of thinking about, the way the economy works, and he does actually understand more about the economy than a lot of the other politicians you see. So I thought that was appropriate.
Dr. Shealy, do you have any questions for Jason?
Well, I'd just like to say good on you, Jason.
Hey, thanks.
Any final comments, Jason, before, we're going to be going into a break in a couple minutes, but, I think it's wonderful that you've exercised your right to run for president. And the qualifications that, are just two, as far as I know. You have to be a natural born citizen, whatever that means, because that definition is fluid. I used to think that meant that you had to be born in the United States of parents who were Americans. I thought that's what that meant, but evidently you can be born someplace else and still be president, like Barry Soetoro. But and the other thing is you had to be 35 years of age or older. That's it. Period. You didn't have to be of good health. You didn't have to not be a criminal. You could be a pedophile and still run for president. So the only two. And it seems like some of Congress has opted to to exercise the freedom of not being restricted as to who can run for office. But I think it's great that you're running. I think it's a breath of fresh air. You're going to have to overcome Joe Biden, who is salivating over his favorite song, which is "Hail to the Chief." But I wish you well. I think it's wonderful. I wish more people would do it. I have written myself in. Dr. Shealy, any comments before we go into the break?
No.
So to prevent any discrimination, Jason, I think you should share with the other 4 broadcasts with whom you engineer at Genesis Communications Network that USA Prepares is in first place regarding the time that has been provided for your candidacy. So you've received a full segment of a broadcast hour. And Dr. Dahlia and Lifestyles Unlimited and Sons of Liberty and Lock and Load should all commit to the same thing. That way it will be fair. So I just want to let you know that that's my position, and I hope our other broadcasters on GCN with whom you engineer will do the same as USA Prepares and give you the same amount of time that you should get as a bona fide candidate, writing candidate for President of the United States. Website is Jason Stanek, Stanek, 2020.com. Dr. Shealy, It's so great to be broadcasting with you on this Columbus Day. I don't know if we're
fun.
well, I don't know how many more times we'll be able to say Happy Columbus Day, because there are some colleges and universities that think that that name should be changed. We should not. I think
those colleges should be forced out of business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are people who have done there are people who have done some heroic things, but it's hard to think of anyone who has done more heroic and courageous things in their life than Christopher Columbus, getting on a ship and sailing with two other ships and two other crews besides his, sailing to the unknown in the ocean, where you look around and you don't see anything for days, weeks, and months. And you're looking at the food supply dwindling. You're looking at the fresh water supply evaporating, and your crew is ready to mutiny because it doesn't look like it's going to work. And yet he did it. And one of the most courageous individuals ever on the planet. And some universities think that we should not have a Columbus Day here in the Americas. Unbelievable. And so who are they? Well, there are some campuses that are celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. Indigenous Peoples Day. Humboldt State University, Idaho State University, Merrimack College, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, also known as MIT, University of North Dakota. So those are just a few who are celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, or have other celebratory names for today, which is Christopher Columbus Day. Any comments, Dr. Shealy?
Well, insanity is abundant.
Absolutely. It's ubiquitous. Yeah. Dr. Shealy, 60 years ago, if I had a sore throat, my mother or father would say, okay, well, we'll get some warm water and we'll gargle with salt water. That was common. Vitamin C, if you have a sore throat, vitamin C, gargle with salt water. Is that still in vogue today, where if you have a sore throat that you gargle with?
Well, I don't think it is, but it could help.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it seemed to me that it did help. It really did. And we used very strong concentration of salt, and basically warmed some water up in a pan on the stove, heated it up, added some salt, stirred it in, a quarter of a glass, and then gargle deep down the throat, gargle, and then spit it out, gargle and spit it out, and do that multiple times a day. It seemed that, and the vitamin C seemed to work, at least somewhat. Do we know why it worked, Dr. Shealy? Do we know why salt seems to have a medicinal or antibacterial effect?
Well, actually, I think that's a fairly strong concentration of sodium, and I would suspect it sort of dehydrates even some bacteria or viruses. They need water too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's removing the hydration from the bacteria or the virus so that it can't survive. Okay,
right.
I didn't know the reason why it was salt, but that sounds like a great answer. All right, we're going to go into a break. Dr. Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. Dr. Shealy, is your clinic open today, or are
yes.
Okay, clinic's open today. So national holiday. Now all the government types are, I'm sure they're busy taking time off from their taking time off, and we'll be right back. On a very sad note, I received an email from Captain John Reagan this weekend. And I'm going to read you the email in its entirety. It's only 5 lines. And it says, Vincent, Becky's dad passed away this morning. Now, Becky is John Reagan's wife. And so it says, Becky's dad passed away this morning. His first cancer diagnosis was over 15 years ago and ended up with 3 types, including multiple myeloma. Goodbyes were said on Tuesday. Because of COVID, the last time we got to see him was Valentine's weekend. Feel free to share this news with the USA Prepares family. John Reagan. So, very sad news. Our prayers go out to the Captain John Reagan family and Becky's family. Very sad. And Dr. Shealy, 3 types of cancers, including multiple myeloma over 15 years. That seems like that was quite a long fight. That's
Becky's a long battle.
Yes. And can you tell us what multiple myeloma is, Dr. Shealy?
Well, it is a very serious cancer. It involves the bone marrow, essentially, but it can spread outside the bone to any part of the body.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
it's not
and
the same as leukemia. It's quite different. It's the more, leukemia is the red and white blood cells. Myeloma is a different type of cancer of the bone marrow.
I remember meeting a man who had bone cancer, and I don't know if this was the same cancer or not, but he was in extreme pain. Is that something that?
Yes, it causes a lot of pain usually.
And this man did something I'd never seen before. While I was talking to him, he took a cigar, and this would be a cigar about the diameter of your pinky. And he cut this brand new cigar into 3 lengths, and he would stick 2 of them between his cheek and his gum to infuse nicotine into his bloodstream quickly, because he said that it helped with the pain. Have you ever heard of that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, smokers often say that, but, remember, smoking does affect your ability to think straight in many respects. It does give you something of a high, apparently, but it also inhibits your real, it inhibits your dopamine, anandamide especially.
Mm-hmm. Well, I never heard of it, and I thought, my reaction, and I was quite young at the time, my reaction to that was, wow, here is a man with cancer, and tobacco is linked to cancer, and the chemicals in tobacco are linked to cancer, not only the
I'm with
tobacco.
You all the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's anything one could say good about nicotine.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good insecticide. Right?
Okay, for the human, anything good for the human body.
Right. And, class, if you want to try an interesting experiment, Dr. Shealy, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I have. Every once in a while, ants show up. There's lots of rain here at the farm sometimes, and the ants get drowned out, and they look for higher ground because they don't want to drown. And so sometimes they show up in the kitchen, or sometimes they show up outside on the veranda. And if I can find some white flour, there'll be an ant highway. That's what we used to call them. And it's like one ant following the next ant in serial fashion, single file, generally. And if you take some white flour and you just draw a line with white flour, and it doesn't have to be a mountain for them to climb, just a very thin line, they don't know what to do, and they'll go around it. They don't want to go over it. There must be something in the flour, white flour, that you might make bread with, that ants find distasteful. Or maybe it's the smell.
Smarter than people.
Well, I remember, Dr. Shealy, seriously, I remember back in Virginia, I wanted to buy some wheat. And so this was 30 years ago, maybe more. And I said to the mill, I said, I'd like to buy some wheat. And they said, do you want it treated or not? And I said, I want it unground. And they said, yeah, but do you want it treated or not? And it's treated with what? And he really didn't want to say. And ultimately, finally, I guess I asked the question so many different ways that they finally yielded and said, insecticide. Do you want it treated with insecticide or not? So do you want the bugs to pop out or not? Yes or no? How do you want it? And so we don't think about, flour containing insecticide, do we?
Well,
maybe that.
Of course I do. That's why I have not eaten wheat in 14 years because of Roundup. not an insecticide, but it's a poison worse than insecticides, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to share that little anecdotal story. Dr. Shealy, I have seen in the past, I haven't been to a store in a long time, but I remember seeing vitamins at Sam's Club. And Sam's Club, they have the omegas, and they have all kinds of vitamins, and they had children's vitamins, which were like gummy bears. Heck, you don't have to swallow them. I mean, take the work right out of it, just chew them. And then for bigger people, older people, they had women's vitamins. And then right next to that, they had men's vitamins. And then they had over 50 vitamins, meaning if you're over 50 years old. Now, is there really a significant difference? I'll take the children's out because that's a chewy kind of a thing, and maybe, the dosage is a little different for children. But men versus women versus over 50 years old, is there a substantial difference in the formulation of vitamins that would really make a difference?
No.
Okay.
Basically, we need certain basics, D3, the B complex, etc. The best form of A, astaxanthin, and C.
So, and this would be I'm talking about multivitamins, the equivalent of, one a day or
right.
Centrum or something like that. So what I'm saying is, it seemed to me like this was more of a marketing gimmick to say, oh, no, you're over 50, so you need the one with the blue label or the pink label or whatever it was. And if you're, a man, you need the one with the green label. And it seemed like it was more marketing than it was substance. And that was my take. And I wanted to get your expert opinion on.
I think that's probably true.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So then, of course, the next question falls right in line with that. And that is, so if you happen to, let's say the missus of the house said, you know what, here's some, women's vitamins, women's multivitamins. And she decided to get that and didn't get the one for the men. Would it be fine with you if the man of the house or the teenager of the house had the men or the women's vitamin?
I think so.
Okay. Is there anything that women's vitamins might have that men's would not have? Do they need something that men don't need? Or do women need something that men shouldn't have?
The difference is iron.
Okay.
Women need iron much more than men do. And excess iron in men can kill the liver.
Okay. I'm looking at a formulation. I found it right here on the internet. 8 milligrams, women's Sam's Club, women's vitamins, 8 milligrams of iron. And they say that's 44% of the recommended daily value. Is that too much iron, 8 milligrams?
No, it should not be too much for anybody.
Okay. So then, if that's the case, then there's no big deal about a man taking a woman's vitamin. I don't, let's see, but that was my question. Will you be hurting yourself by taking the wrong vitamin?
Right.
Okay. All right. I was doing some research about computers, and the central processing unit, or the CPU, would be considered the brain of the computer, and then memory ought to be part of the brain too. And what happens with the computer's processor is it takes a lot of energy from the power supply, and it generates heat, and so you have a cooling system, which would be a heat sink, and air blowing over the heat sink to keep the central processing unit cool so it operates properly, doesn't get confused. And I was thinking that it's kind of like people. If the body gets too hot, it gets confused. If it gets real hot, it melts down, right? And if you have a fever of, let's say, 106, you're in big, big trouble, right?
Absolutely.
And 106 is, not too far in terms of Fahrenheit degrees from 98.6.
But it's far enough to be in trouble.
Right. And so then I was thinking, what about all the energy? Because, I've got, right now I'm running 3 computers to do this end of the broadcast. Genesis has a bunch at their end, and you're on the telephone, which is using some computers as well. So there's a lot of energy going to making these computers work, the communication system, and some of it's going to heat, which you could say is wasted unless it's the wintertime and you want the extra heat, in the building where you are. Well, I looked up how much energy goes to the brain, our brain, typically. And I was quite astonished because, you think of, at least most people might think of the brain as kind of just sitting there and using a little bit of energy, but no, it uses between 10 and 20%, at least what I've found out, of the energy that you eat. 10 to 20%. So I guess the 10% would be while you're sleeping, and then maybe 20% to keep all those systems working, like the circulatory system and the respiratory system and the digestive system and the limbs, the feet and the legs and the arms and the hands and so forth. I found that quite astonishing. As much as 20% of our energy goes to our brain.
Well, our brain is it does require more energy per gram of space, if you will, than any other organ.
Is that because it's the busiest? Is that because there's a lot going on there?
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is, it is the hotbed, if you will, of activity in the body. Second to the heart.
I remember reading.
The heart is second to the brain. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You would think that the heart would be number one. I mean, that thing is working hard all the time, right?
Well, but that's just a muscle contracting, and that's certainly a certain amount of energy. But the brain has produced the energy that you make the heart beat.
Yeah. So the brain is telling the heart, "Yo, heads up."
Yep.
Faster, slower. Yeah. All right. We'll be right back with Dr. Norm Shealy. My brain wanders off in lots of strange directions, and it was one of them. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Shealy's with us. He's in the clinic today, and if you'd like to go to the website, find out more about Dr. Shealy and his clinic and his offerings and vitamins, mineral supplements, etc., books, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, normshealy.com. Telephone number is there as well. You can go to the website and get the number. Dr. Shealy, would you like to tell us the telephone number for your clinic?
417-351-5221.
417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. Dr. Shealy, how do you feel about your broadcast? Your broadcast in the at the new location, KICK AM 1340.
Yes. Sergey is revamping it and actually videoing it, doing the entire thing as well as doing the break.
Really? During the break?
Yeah, in other words, he doesn't video, the commercials and the stuff that happen during the break. He actually keeps us talking during the break, put that on Facebook.
Well, that's wonderful. That's, class. So if you want to learn more about Dr. Shealy's broadcast, and he's on once a week with Dr. Sergey Sorin, and, these two medical doctors at the clinic, Dr. Shealy's clinic in Springfield, are on the radio 1 hour a week. And Dr. Shealy, would you tell us how they can listen, or how our class can listen to you and see you in action?
1340 AM KICK, or they can call in 417-447-1777.
Okay. And what is the time that you're live?
It's 4 p.m. Wednesday afternoon, Central Time.
Okay, so class, that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock, 4 to 5, 1 hour. And that's on Wednesday afternoon. And so you can call in that number, 417-447-1777. Now, that's not Genesis Communications Network. That's a local radio station in Springfield, Missouri. It's a 1,000-watt station. It is a local area radio station. And I believe that, well, there's well over 1,000 of these AM 1340s across the United States. They're owned by different companies. Sonny Skidmore owns one of them, and hers is called KLID, AM 1340. Same frequency on the other side of Missouri. And it is, AM 1340s are designed by the Federal Communications Commission to be local. Okay, so that is, you won't find all of the national news there. You'll find what's happening locally in the village. And it's a great concept, and I really like the idea of local area radio. And so that's what Dr. Shealy's on in Springfield, Missouri. One more time, that's AM 1340, KICK are the call letters, and 4 to 5 p.m. on Wednesdays, Central Time. Telephone number to call into that radio broadcast to be on the air, 417-447-1777. Dr. Shealy, getting back to multiple vitamins, is it possible to overdose and hurt yourself by taking multiple vitamins?
Oh, yes. You know, actually over 100 milligrams of vitamin B6 can cause significant symptoms of generalized burning sensations. And, of course, anything over 10,000 units of basic vitamin A can cause brain problems. And taking more than 10,000 a day of vitamin D3, if you weigh under 140 pounds, can build up to toxicity.
Okay, so generally speaking, without reading every single label on the air, would a person be okay and not run the risk of overdosing by taking the recommended dose, which is like one tablet a day, one multivitamin per day?
Well, that depends on, every company puts out different things. Remember, the recommended daily requirement, according to your FDA, of the basic B vitamins is 1 or 2 milligrams of each of the basics, and that's not nearly enough. Their recommended daily intake of vitamin C is going up from 60 to 80 milligrams a day, and that's not nearly enough. So who's doing the recommending, the company or science?
Mm-hmm. And how does science know, Dr. Shealy? How does science know that, this is the upper threshold? What happens? Are there experimentation? Do they do experiments on people and say, you know what, those 72 just died. I think we ought to back down a little bit. Is that what happens?
Exactly. And then when they find somebody with toxic things, theoretically they should go ahead and do other experiments to prove their point.
So our son was telling us about this guy. And what he does is he signs up to be paid to be experimented on. So literally, he is a guinea pig for the medical village, and they will inject him with all kinds of things. They'll pay him, I don't know, $100 to get this injection, that. And he loves it. He just gets all these injections now. Do you think, when we come back, can you tell us what your opinion is on being a lab rat like that? Would you say get a different job, or what are your thoughts about being a lab rat? We'll be right back with Dr. Shealy, medical doctor, right after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Dr. Norm Shealy, medical doctor. Website is normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, we were talking about lab rats, and, back in the college days, university students get invited to become participants where they get injected or consume tablets or drink potions, and then they are monitored for the results to see, toxicity and things like that. What are your thoughts about human guinea pigs, human lab rats?
Well, as long as they have informed consent, I think it's fine. I mean, let's face it, in medical school, I participated in many, many such research projects.
Mm-hmm. And can you share with us what types of projects you were involved in.
Well, the most dangerous one was one where they took a pint of blood out of you, put you on a tilt table, and rapidly stood you up to see whether your blood pressure dropped.
Okay.
I think of all the ones I took, that was the most serious. But there were others where they would give you intravenous amounts of fluid and check your, what's happening to your blood, or even antibiotics and how it appeared in the semen. And I mean, we had all kinds of odd research going on when I was in medical school.
Mm-hmm. What about toxicity? What about, here's an insecticide, and we want to find a safe level to see if it's dangerous.
I think I would have been smart enough to say no, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I never participated in any that was known to be toxic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like maybe Roundup. So we're working on this new product. It's called Roundup, and we want to see how much a person can take before he dies.
Right. Well, in my opinion, none.
Yeah, right. I'm with you. I was reading a story on the internet about COVID and SARS. How long does it last on different substrates? So, for example, it seems that it depends on temperature. So, for example, these are Fahrenheit temperatures. So, at 104 degrees, COVID on cotton. So like a cotton shirt, for example, T-shirt, or blue jeans, at 104 degrees lasts less than 16 hours, according to this report.
I think that kind of research is really interesting to talk about. But recently, the CDC, the Center for Death Certainty, announced that it did not have a virus. If you don't have a virus, how can you tell how long it lives? I mean, that's typical of the nonsense the CDC's been putting out for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we are apt to be confused because the information is on both sides. Yes, no. It is so strange. Never in my life have I seen the media have two stories on the same website. One saying yes, one saying no. It's unbelievable. And then it changes, frequently. Even multiple times per day. But this story I find fascinating because this appears like it could actually be science. So at 104 degrees Fahrenheit, they say that with this particular study, and the study was a CSIRO study, CISRO, if that's how you pronounce it. At 104 degrees, the COVID virus lasts less than 16 hours. Now, you drop that temperature to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and it can last 3 days on cotton. And if you drop it a little further to 68 degrees, which is comfortable, less than 14 days. But 14 days is a long time, if that's true.
And, of course, you're talking about the difference between 68 and 98 or 104. It's going to dehydrate faster at those higher temperatures, too. So it may be related not just to temperature, but to the fact that it loses moisture.
Well, it's a brilliant deduction, Dr. Shealy. Now, here's another substrate or set of substrates. So this would be glass, steel, paper, and banknotes. And banknotes are made with polymers and fibers and so forth. At 104 degrees, 24 hours. It lasts 24 hours. Now, the same substrates at 86 degrees, cooler, last 7 days. And then if you bring it down to 68 degrees, at least 28 days. It's a month. So, Dr. Shealy, seriously, when we think about this, if someone hands us a banknote for change, and we're at a 68 degree temperature, it's, that virus can be on there for 28 days. Now, most of us have been under the belief that, I'll just leave it out in the sun for a few days and everything will be good. Well, that may not be the case. If at 68 degrees, the virus can last on glass and steel and vinyl and paper and, banknotes, 28 days, at least 28 days. That's a huge problem, Dr. Shealy, in as I see it. That means we have to be even more careful than before. And so let's move on to just plain old vinyl. Vinyl at 104 degrees, it lasts 48 hours. And it seems like paper banknotes it would last longer, and I'm wondering if that's because there's more to eat. Is that what it is? Could that be that, doesn't the virus need to have some kind of food, or is that not true?
That I do not know. But, I know it must use some sugar at least, but I don't know.
My grandmother used to say, and I'm talking about in the 1950s, so we're talking around 70 years ago. I remember at least 60 years ago her saying that money's dirty. She's talking about, Federal Reserve notes, money or silver certificates. Money's dirty. You don't know where it's been. And she was absolutely right. You don't know where it's been. Today money is used up to, roll it up into snort cocaine, and people put it in their underwear, and they touch it with dirty hands. I mean, that's just the beginning, right? So I think she was absolutely right that money is dirty, and maybe.
One of the most interesting things that I have noticed in the current stupidinic is I don't lick envelopes that are gummed if they don't have they're a plastic over the sticky. I go to the sink and wet my fingers to close the envelope.
Okay, I've been doing that for
envelopes, but no more.
Well, okay, so that glue that's on the back of an old-fashioned, good old days type envelope was made with horsehide glue. And that's part of the material that was used in that kind of a glue to stick the envelope together when you wet it. Well, when I learned that many, many decades ago, I would take a paper towel, tear off a little corner of a paper towel, wet the paper towel, and then wipe the paper towel onto the envelope and do it that way. And so, yeah, because you don't know where the envelope's been. It's not considered food, right? That right. Glue on the back of an envelope.
It is definitely not food.
Right. So you're right about licking it, not licking it. That's what I think we should do. And as we go down this drain, I suggest that you consider your animals as well. Your dogs and cats and your domestic animals. Make sure that you don't expose them to things that are harmful. Like, if I open a box outside and it has one of those mucilage type glues on the reinforced paper tape, the security tape on a box that gets shipped here, the chickens will come over and they'll look at that and they'll say, I think that looks edible, and they'll start pecking at it. I want to make sure that they don't eat the glue, they don't eat the fibers, they don't eat the plastic peanuts, for packing. So I'm very careful with what we do with things that could hurt our animals. And just on that line of thinking, antifreeze. Antifreeze, ethylene glycol-based antifreeze, is sweet to the taste. So I have read. I haven't tried it. I'm not going to try it. But,
right.
But it will kill your dog or cat, like a teaspoon will kill your dog or cat. So if you have an antifreeze or coolant leak under your car and you back the car out and, if you're pretending to go to work, and you back your car out of your driveway so your neighbors think you have a job, and you have an antifreeze leak and your cat or dog goes out there, they're going to love it and it can kill them. So please be very, very careful with that. One of the things that we take for granted, Dr. Shealy, is sterilizing thermometers. Now, I remember the good old days, and I'm talking about the really good old days, like in the 60s and the 50s, when if you got an injection, the doctor would rub your arm. There would be this jar with a pump on the top, and they would take out of another jar, cotton ball, put the cotton ball on top of this pump bottle, and alcohol would be pumped up into this little tray which was the cap of the bottle or jar, and it would infuse that ball with alcohol, the cotton ball with alcohol, and then the doctor would rub that on your arm. Then you'd get the injection. And alcohol was used as a sterilizing agent. How would you recommend we sterilize these digital thermometers that are ubiquitous? How do we sterilize them between uses? What's your recommendation?
Well, if you're sticking it into the mouth, I don't think just wiping it with an alcohol sponge, if you will, is adequate. I mean, I think it's okay on the skin, but, you know, when you stick something in the mouth, it's got a lot more sticky stuff left on the thermometer than you've got on your arm, on dry skin. So I don't like the idea of sticking. I mean, basically, when I take an oral temperature, I have a plastic sleeve that goes over the thermometer, and I throw that away after every use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that makes a lot of sense, but I don't know if the average guy or gal is going to have those plastic sleeves. Can we buy them?
Well, yes, you can. I mean, I bought mine. I bought 50 at a time.
Okay, I just never seen them for sale. I've never seen them for sale anywhere. Maybe I'm not looking at, well, I don't look anymore, but yeah, I've been to the store in a long time, but, okay. So is that like something you get from the Chinese factory outlet, or is that a medical supply, or what do we do?
You can buy it on the internet. I think okay. I ordered mine on the internet.
Okay. All right. And what I've been doing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, I will wash the thermometer immediately after use, and then I will put drops from one of those squeeze bottles of hydrogen peroxide on it, and I'll let it set for like a few seconds, and then I'll rinse it with water, then I'll wipe it with a clean cloth and let it dry. Is that effective enough, or do I need to do a better job?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. And if you have any comments, Dr. Shealy, that you want to share with us about anything, please keep that in mind when we come back. Dr. Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, do you have any comments that you wanted to share with the class?
Well, I checked the internet while we were on the break, and there are scores of disposable types of covers for thermometers.
Is that what they're called, disposable covers?
Yes.
Okay, that's the nomenclature. Okay, very good. Something very disturbing has caught my attention, Dr. Shealy, and this is about where we are as people. And that is, there was a study about violence. And believe it or not, 8% of both Democrats, and I don't really want to get into politics, but this has to do with the human psyche, the human condition, and the devolving of humanity. But there was a study, 8% of Democrats and 8% of Republicans that were surveyed felt it is legitimate to use violence to advance political goals. Now, that means people will take into their own hands violence to get their way. 8%. That's an enormously high percentage if you think about it. And we've been mentioning on this broadcast that we feel, or at least I feel, that the Second American Revolution and the Second Civil War have already started, and that no matter who wins the contest for the selection of CEO/President of the United States, whether it be the Democrat candidate or the Republican candidate, there will be violence almost immediately, if not immediately.
Agree. Absolutely, okay. Almost certainly.
Okay. So that number was 8%, okay? 8% of Democrats and 8% of Republicans feel that it's okay. It's legitimate. They feel it's legitimate to use violence to advance political goals. But that was like 3 years ago. Now, the number is way bigger. It's 33% for the Democrats and 36% for the Republicans. So roughly 1 out of 3 people who are either 1 out of 3 Democrats or 1 out of 3 Republicans. And I'm rounding, but not by much.
That's well over 100 million people.
Right. Right. This is a really big deal, Dr. Shealy. And this survey says that right now, 1 out of 3 roughly feels it's okay, it's legitimate to use violence to advance political goals. And we are seeing the tip of that iceberg right now with the rioting, the pulling down of statues. I mean, really statues of people in history in America, we're going to pull them down because some people think that it's wrong. Like, believe it or not, Eskimo Pies. Now, Eskimo Pie, P-I-E. That is the name of an ice cream, treat, if you will. And it was around 100 years ago, plus or minus 1 or 2 years, that Eskimo Pies were named because there was a guy who had a store, and one of his customers couldn't decide whether he wanted chocolate bar or chocolate or ice cream. And so he thought, we could put those together. We could take ice cream, coat it with chocolate, and have a new product. And that product was called the Eskimo Pie. Well, it became a brand, and it was 1922, 98 years ago. And they're changing that now because it is considered offensive to use the word Eskimo pie to describe a chocolate ice cream, chocolate-covered ice cream. Can you imagine that? That's where we are today. So people have lost their minds. Now, to me, I learned about the Eskimos in elementary school, and they live in the north where it's really, really cold. Really, really cold. And nobody had this disgruntled looking caricature of an Eskimo with this ice cream treat. It was kind of like, wow, it's really cold up there. The Eskimo treat is cold. It's got chocolate wrapping, chocolate covering. What a great idea. Nope, not anymore. So Columbus Day may get changed to Indigenous Peoples Day or some other name for the event that celebrated the discovery of the Americas. We've lost our minds, and here we are. So 1 out of 3 people who are Democrats and 1 out of 3 Republicans think it's okay to use violence to advance political goals. And Madonna, remember, she talked about blowing up the White House? So we're talking about Americans' predisposition to violence to advance their political goals. And 1 out of 3 Democrats and 1 out of 3 Republicans think it's okay, think it's acceptable to use violence to advance their political goals. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells me that there's one almost certain thing about the election, that regardless of who wins, there will be violence. That's what that tells me. And it's been telling me that for months, and I've been reporting that here on USA Prepares, and so have other instructors, and Dr. Shealy has been in agreement. And so in the past, when we had an election 4 years ago, Madonna was talking about blowing up the White House. This was like a fantasy. And in the 2016 election, and she was not arrested. And so here's a person, a public person who is talking about this fantasy of blowing up the White House. And could that incite violence? Of course it could. And then you have this other person who I consider to be of low IQ, Kathy Griffin. So she held up this bloody-looking head of President Donald Trump in effigy, okay, a cut-off severed head, like something that was the end product of the use of a guillotine. And she held that up, and she wasn't arrested. So we have people who have demonstrated that violence seems to be okay with them. And that was 4 years ago. And that's when the numbers were 8% of Americans, or Democrats and Republicans, thought that violence was okay. Let's see. We've got Kyle in Montana. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning, gentlemen. Dr. Shealy and Vince, both. I have a thought on that, Vince, because I've been thinking about it for quite a while. The quote, for lack of a better term, the quote unquote Republican right was not at any point in any of these things happening in the country, even when Obama was elected and things, they were not inciting violence. But since Trump has been elected, the leftists and the communists are inciting violence. And when the sleeping majority of the law-abiding people have had enough and they wake up, it's going to be like, you know, the kitty cat swatting at the grizzly bear, because the repercussions of the violence that is being perpetrated in the United States right now by a lot of these communists are changing the attitude of the ones that are peaceful into thinking that, sure, violence is going to be met and destroyed, and it's going to be put down, because violence begets violence, and you have to use violence to overcome violence. There's only going to be one winner in this war. And if the communists win, there will be nothing but a socialistic, communistic, dictatorial government. And so it's like they're pushing you into a civil war, whether you like it or not. And anyway, that's my thinking on it.
Dr. Shealy, any comments?
I'm agree with you all the way, Big Blue.
You know, back in the 60s, Nikita Khrushchev was at the United Nations, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but I believe he said, "We will bury you." And he was the head of the Communist Party. Do you remember anything like that, Kyle?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and you know, he said, "We'll take America without firing a shot," but that failed under Obama, you know, because there was enough good people, and so they have no problem. And this is the hard thing. You know, I was talking to another young guy the other day, and he's ex-military, and I said to him, you know, the problem in this country right now, in my opinion, is that the sleeping giant, so to speak, the regular general GDP, as you and I both have called them, are not awake yet to the fact that we're in a war. And it's like I told him, I said, if you were sent into a place with no ammunition, but they sent you a gun and backpack and food supply and stuff, but no ammunition because they didn't really believe you were in a war, what kind of outcome do you think would happen? And so the reality is the American people have to wake up and understand that these people inciting violence are already starting a war. They are. I mean, and Vince, in actuality, you think that in using violence to protect yourself or to, for a lack of a better term, affect a particular end is necessary sometimes. And you and I both agree that that is true, because if somebody comes on my property inciting violence, then I'm going to use violence to put them down. But you know what I mean? And so there's a certain point at which there is not much of a choice for anybody. You agree or not?
I agree that if we are under attack, we will respond with whatever force is necessary to protect ourselves. Now, I don't think that our plan is to go out and beat people up, but if they want to come and take what we have, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be lead first, at least. And 60 years ago, Nikita Khrushchev, I found a quote. He said, quote, "Your children's children will live under communism. You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we will keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you finally wake up and find you already have communism. We will not have to fight you. We will so weaken your economy until you fall like overripe fruit into our hands. The democracy will cease to exist when you take away from those who are willing to work and give to those who would not. That was in 1959, and he delivered that prediction for America at the United Nations in New York City. So, I remember that. I was very young, but I remember that, and it was a big deal. And so Nikita Khrushchev, the head of the Communist Party, told us that he was going to bury us. They weren't going to have to fire a shot. We will collapse from within. And here we are. Here we are. We are collapsing from within. There are stupid people who want what those who have worked very hard for have earned. Now, I'm not talking about Wall Street stealing money and fleecing people. Those people don't deserve what they have achieved, in my opinion. And I had that, by the way, I had that discussion with the family last night. I said, so, let's say Jim Cramer, of the Wall Street gang shows up and things have gotten really bad. Y'all want to help him? And the answer is hardly. Hardly. We don't feel it is necessary for us to help people who have been fleecing for their own monetary gains, beating people up, stealing from them, etc. We're not going to help them. We're not doing it. So those days are over. Any other comments?
I have one other thought, Vince. And,
sure.
And this is something I've been considering as well. If you wait until they show up at your door or the edge of your property, it's too late. Because if you are facing, you and whoever you've got there are facing 200 or 300 people, even if they don't have the same kind of weapons that you do, it's too late. I'm considering this. I'm just thinking about it out loud here with you, but I've been thinking about it for a while, that the reality is, if you wait that long, you're going to be overrun, and everything that you have done will be for nothing, because they'll take it all. And this is just me thinking out loud a little bit here on the air. Maybe not a really great thing to do, but I'm just sitting and considering the people that are willing to go and meet these people and put them and stop them where they are, rather than waiting till those people get enough momentum and people behind them that they can and will and do show up at your door. But
I've been recommending this. I've been recommending the series Combat, C-O-M-B-A-T, exclamation point. It was filmed in the 1960s. Now, the 1960s, early 60s, that was 15 years after World War II had ended. It ended in 1945. And a lot of GIs came back home, and they were starting their families and building their lives as family units. And there was a lot of sacrifice, and there was a lot of death and destruction worldwide. Well, Combat was set in France, and it was a squad of GIs, U.S. Army, and what it was like, the suffering, the scarcity, the freezing cold, the social situations. And on a number of, there's 5 years worth of this series, and it is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And my new favorite best actor, bar none, is Vic Morrow. His facial expressions, his use of words in the dialogue, he directed a number of these episodes. But the knocks came on the door. A couple of our guys would be in a farmhouse taking shelter because they were wounded. The knock would come on the door. It would be the SS outside, the Nazi SS outside. And what do? How do you answer the door? Do you not answer the door? And it was always a dilemma. And that's why I've recommended for so many reasons that our class get this series, either watch it on YouTube. It's available, as David in Illinois said, it's all available for free on YouTube. I suggest you watch it as a family. It is riveting. And what are you going to do when the knock comes on the door? Are you going to answer it? Or are you not going to answer it? And if you don't answer it, is it likely that the door is going to be bashed in? And the answer is, yeah, it probably will be bashed in. Okay. And when it's bashed in, what are you going to do next? Are you going to squeeze that trigger, or are you going to put your hands up? What are you going to do? Or, while there's a knock on the door, are a few of you going to run outside the back door and the side door with rifles, and are you going to put these guys who are at your front door in the crossfire? Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, normshealy.com. Kyle in Montana is with us on the phone. Dr. Shealy, do you mind if I read that email that you just sent me about Lou Rockwell in the November election? Is that okay with you?
Of course.
Okay. Class, Dr. Shealy sent me this. Dateline, August 29th, 2020, LouRockwell.com. Quote, when those two opposing groups clash in D.C., shots will be fired, and Civil War number 2 will begin. Leftist minions in every major metropolitan area in America will come out of their basements and make the current riots seem like a practice run. It will go badly for anyone unable to protect their home and their family. End quote. I agree completely with those words. Dr. Shealy?
Well, I think the chances are 100% civil war. We're on the verge already.
Okay.
Whether it begins the day after the election or over the next month after the election, it'll begin.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And soon after the election. So you can take that as that night, the next day, or even if, we don't know who won and we're going to have to count, and we could go into be thrown into a constitutional crisis. This is a very serious time. And we're only talking, I believe, 23 days. 23 days. So if you knew with relative certainty that things were going to get very, very scary, very dangerous in 23 days, what would you do? What would you do? Well, we've been preparing you for this for 10 years, Dr. Shealy and I, as well as the faculty of USAP, Chris, Kyle as well. We've been preparing you for this for 10 years. Here it is. So if you believe that in 23 days things would get very, very serious, what would you do? Would you get what you need now, or would you say, well, listen, it's going to be all right. It'll all work out. Would you get what you need? We are getting what we need at the fastest we can. Now, we're not wasting money. We're being very deliberate. And I suggest you consider doing the same thing. Like soap, like washcloths, like towels, like linens, like food, like everything you could possibly need. Spare parts for whatever. If you're your vehicles, if you're thinking, geez, that old jalopy isn't working so good, I need to get a starter, I'll get it, a couple months when the price goes down. You ought to get it now, if you need it. The fan belts, the water pumps, the antifreeze, the lubricants, the oil, the chains for the chainsaw. So I've decided during this broadcast that on Friday I will take 2 hours and I will go down the list of things I think you need to get immediately. That'll be on Friday. So it'll be just me on Friday. Dr. Shealy, any comments?
Well, the time has come, the walrus said, get ready, prepared.
Kyle? Kyle, your thoughts?
Well, I agree completely. Hang on just a second, Vince. Let me get out of the wind chimes here just a little bit. It's starting, the wind's picking up around here. But sorry about that. But what I was going to say is, don't just think in terms, folks, if you're preparing, don't just think in terms of the next 2 or 3 months. What would happen if you knew, what do you think people would have done differently going into the last depression if they could have prepared for the time, for all of that time, if they could have done the best they could then? In other words, prepare for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Think about that. And nobody's going to cover it all, but do the best that you can so that your transition into having practically nothing is slowed down and it gives you time to react and think things through.
Okay, so how long did the first Great Depression last? Class, 1929 through 1945, the end of World War II. That's how long it lasted. And what pulled us out of the first Great Depression? World War II. It took a world war literally to pull us out of the first Great Depression. It might take another world war to pull us out of the one that has already started. So, as Kyle said, if you knew, what would you do? A great way of thinking of it. What would you do? What would you do? Would you rally your family together? Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan to get your family all in one place so you don't have to worry about them? Do you? Do you have the water, the shelter, the tools, the books, everything? And it's impossible to get, if you haven't started, it's going to be impossible to get everything. Unless your name is Bezos, Gates, or Buffett, or Soros, you're not going to have enough money to get all the things you need immediately. Plan, have your meeting today. Have your meeting today and jump on it first thing tomorrow morning. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us. It's always delightful broadcasting with you. Class, we have no idea what's coming in terms of, well, we know what's coming, but we have no idea how bad and how long it's going to be. I think 20 years, but Dr. Shealy, thank you for being with us and sharing your expertise. Kyle, thank you for being with us.